look at them to let you know whether or not it's decent or not. So this information should be, bright yellow, orange, very nice. Yes, please. We've got orange and we've got the heat. So these will be your feedback forms. And I will generally try and provide you with a feedback form that you can hold on to. This doesn't look good. What does that say on the screens? Okay. Typically, your feedback forms will be single-sided, but project forms will be double-sided. And as I showed you last week, you will have a binder per group. So as you can see, you're going to be starting today on tooth number 30. It's going to be an all-ceramic crown material. It's always in bold and larger than the rest. And we have a target deadline. This is not absolute, but this is your target. So we will start today, and you should try and finish by the end of class next period. Nothing will ever be due at the beginning of class, so please do not bum rush instructors at the beginning of class trying to get something checked off. Okay, you will have until the end of class to get it done. And again, while there is a point value assessed, this is not something that is tabulated for your grade. Your grade is determined from your competency scores. The sheet before you, the orange sheet, is something you need to keep up with and document your faculty feedback, which is why you have plenty of space there, and you can use the back side as well. So it will very likely take you several abutment teeth until you get to a point that something's going to be evaluated. This sheet that you have in front of you will not be turned in. There will be a sheet that will be contained within a group binder that I will have access to. Okay, so you'll need to transfer your feedback to that particular sheet. Okay? And since we're all here, you need to score between these first two columns in order for you to qualify for this to be acceptable before you can take a competency exam. The faculty can give you scoring in between, and rather than giving you something in this column or this column, the last two columns where 2 or 4 or 0, bless you, is located, they will typically ask you just to get another abutment tooth. Okay, I'm not interested in you not passing something. If you have obliterated tooth structure to the point it is not, clinically acceptable, we're just going to ask you to get another tooth until you can achieve something that's going to be acceptable, okay? So that may take a couple of teeth to do that. And we want you to ideally be within these first two columns. And faculty will give you scoring in between those two columns. If there's a 0 next to it, that is not something that we're going to focus on for that particular project. Each project is numbered. So you have project 1 and 2. We typically do 2 abutments per crown preparation, okay? But that means that you'll probably do more than that, but you at least need to have 2 evaluated. Your competency will be on one of those 2. So please do not ask me which tooth are we going to be doing for the competency. It's one of the 2, usually the largest of the 2. Is that clear? Okay. So no one's going to ask me what tooth are we doing for the competency. Okay, that's good. All right, are there any questions about that? No? Okay. I'm going to do my best to make it through. I don't know if my voice is going to hold out, so. Okay, so this morning we're going to talk about the all-ceramic preparation. I selected this one in particular because it is the most aggressive preparation there is, meaning the most amount of reduction for aesthetics and and restoration or material stability, and it's easier for a first-timer to try and work your way through this one rather than trying to do something that's conservative. So now would be the time for you to burn, baby, burn, and have fun with your teeth, your abutment teeth. All right, so for our first preparation here, this is just showing, I'm not expecting that you would do an index, but this is just showing you what type of a method that you could utilize to do some anatomical reduction. For our first 2 or 3 preparations, I am going to ask that you follow this particular technique. You have brand new burrs that are diamond and you're working on plastic teeth. The plastic will burn readily. You need to make sure that you have your air water going and have water as you're working on your plastic teeth, because you'll just destroy your diamond instrumentation very quickly. If you will take your diamond burr block out, it should have fixed on it. If you don't have yours, you can just look on with someone else very quickly. You're going to flip that open. Down there, can I see yours? So essentially, the burrs that I want you to begin to utilize are these 2, which are the 856, 856. You can also utilize this 106, I think, 39. And that is about it. Understand that if you will look at your burrs, that many of them have a black stripe, green stripe, or red stripe. Black stripe meaning that is a coarse diamond and works very efficiently. Green stripe, essentially the same thing. A red stripe would mean that it's a super fine and polishing burr. Okay? So I'd ask for you not to be experimental with all the rest and try and stick with the first couple of 2 or 3 burrs that I'm asking you to utilize. And once we kind of get through the first 2 or 3 preps, then you can be adventurous and use what you like. All right? I will be honest with you, I use the 856 exclusively most of the time for everything. And so you have to determine what's going to work for you. So this is what you're going to be working with, okay? Although what is pictured here is an incisor, you're going to be working on a molar, which is a larger tooth, and I've found in years past it's easier for first-year students or the first novice to begin with something larger to start off with. Our first goal will be for us to use that 856 burr, and we're going to do some occlusal and incisal depth grooves. And that's just enough. You're not going to bury the burr. That's just enough to take off the plastic coating of your tooth. Okay? So it's just a little nick, so to speak. As is shown here, it's just enough, maybe half the diameter of the burr, to remove the plastic coating, just so that you can get kind of an idea of how you're going to make your reduction. You're going to begin on, for our molar, you never do a depth groove at the cusp tip, okay? You're going to do depth grooves on the cusp cutting arms. I believe that's what your terminology is. Yes, cutting arms for the cusp. Okay. So you're going to place one little depth groove or two little depth grooves on either side of each cusp, buccal, and lingual, and then you're going to connect the dots, so to speak. You're going to make sure that your reduction is anatomical, so we're just not going straight across the tooth or straight across the occlusal plane. You're going up and over valleys, and if you're thinking about axial reduction, as shown here, again, although this is a central, if you're talking about axial reduction here, you're following the contour of the tooth. And this reduction is from the height of contour axially in. Height of contour on a mandibular molar should be located within one of the occlusal, middle, or gingival thirds, correct? That should come back to you. So you need to be thinking about where is the buccal height of contour, and that your reduction amount is measured from that height of contour axially in. That reduction amount for the axial is 1.5. Clinically, that could vary from 1.5 to 2. Since this is all ceramic, you may need upwards to 2 millimeters. That's a lot of tooth reduction. I am not asking you to do 2 millimeters of reduction. I only want 1.5. If you would take out your 856 burr, can someone tell me what is the dimension that is located underneath there? It should be either 016 or 014 or 018, something like that. 018. That number below the shape of the burr tells you the width midway through that burr, not at the tip, not uniform all the way through, about midway through, and that translates into 1.8 millimeters. About. Please do not take a Bowler gauge and try and measure it. Please do not try and take a periodontal probe and measure it. It has been manufactured that way that you can reliably count on the fact that midway through the shank of that burr, working length of that burr, it is 1.8 millimeters. So if I'm asking you to create a 1.5 millimeter finish line or axial reduction, if you're about 3/4 the width of that burr, you should be fine, right? Not the whole burr, but about 3/4 to half, right? Many students think, oh, if I'm going to do depth grooves, I'm just going to bury the burr to that dimension and then connect the dots. If you do that, you will over-reduce. So I'm asking you to gradually work your way to a point that you can take the burr and then make that measurement. Remember, I just said to you, we are not going to measure this reduction with the periodontal probe or Bowler gauge. We're going to do it with the burr that you're utilizing to make the reduction. That helps you understand the shape of the burr and the instrument that you're working with. Okay, and it's something that we can reliably do because all of these burrs are manufactured to a standard, if that makes sense. So you're going to position your burr along the, and if you could just take your, why don't you just take your burr in your hand and take your mandibular typodont arch on your bench top this one time. You're just going to position that burr parallel to the occlusal plane, and you're going to simulate making depth grooves on either side of the cusp arms, not at the cusp tips. Next, from there, you're going to connect those dots and go the entire length of the occlusal surface. You would first begin on the buccal surface, and then you would flip your handpiece and do the lingual surface. This is not a straight across reduction. You're going to go up and over, so that you are uniformly and anatomically reducing the cusp tips, and the cusp tips only. You are not holding it along the surface of the occlusal surface or the triangular ridges. It is only parallel to the cusp tips and the occlusal plane. We're going to reduce the cusp tips first. That is where the occlusal or incisal reduction is measured, from the cusp tips. What happens down in the central fossa is not something that we're going to focus on. I'll get to it in just a second, yeah. What happens in the central fossa will not be something that you need to focus on. We will not be measuring reduction at that point. Okay? No reduction at that point. And you know what? Since you asked, yeah, let me. Thank you. So depth grooves are going to be, is that too bright? Yes? Okay. Is that better? So you're going to take your burr, and it's going to be in a handpiece, of course, and you're going to begin by making little depth grooves. You're going to hold the burr at this angle, and you're just going to make nicks on either side of the cusp tip. Nicks on either side of the cusp tip. For tooth number 30, you have that distal cusp. We are not going to try and preserve the distal cusp. That cusp will go away with the axial reduction on the distal surface. So please do not try and recreate a distal cusp. What I ask, so you're going to maintain your occlusal reduction at this angle. We are not going to reduce cusp this way. We're not concerned about the amount of reduction that occurs in the central fossa. We're concerned about anatomically reducing the cusp tips and the cusp tips only. Once you have reduced those cusp tips by about 1 millimeter, you're going to then switch to the lingual surface and do the exact same thing. If you instrument in this manner, meaning you hold the burr parallel to the inclined planes, what you will essentially do is, bless you, you will widen your occlusal table and you will not reduce at the cusp tips. That will be a problem later on. So our measurement is done from the occlusal plane, the cusp tips are reduced first, and then you blend the rest of the reduction along the inclined planes and in the central fossa. Your occlusal reduction, again, is measured at the cusp tip. When we're going to utilize our axial reduction, the burr is held parallel to the long axis of the tooth. It is not along the contour here, but along the long axis of the tooth. And again, that reduction is from the height of contour, which should be generally the middle third, correct, on a molar? Middle third in. So I'm not measuring it from axial reduction from the occlusal 1/3 or the junction or at the gingival 1/3. I am measuring from the middle third axially in. You're going to make several depth grooves along the facial or buccal surface. You also do the exact same thing on the lingual surface, bless you. And then you just connect those dots. Being careful that you're not going to angle the burr this way. That burr needs to stay along the long axis of the tooth. Can we see that? This way, not that way. Okay? You're going to essentially make depth grooves, connect the dots, and then blend and make it look nice and pretty. Or do your best to make it look nice and pretty. Yes, ma'am.
First, when we're doing axial reduction in the occlusal plane, we take into account the tilt, like if there's a tilt, this will label tilt. Do we stay parallel to the tilt, or do we stay parallel to the floor?
So the question is, how should you orient your burr to do this reduction? You are thinking about the long axis of the tooth and not the tilt of the clinical crown. Long axis of the tooth and not the tilt of the clinical crown. We have an ideal situation for now. As long as you can accomplish the ideal, you will be fine. Clinically, later on in life, you will be presented where teeth are shifted, super erupted, and all of those fun things. But for now, let's try and just keep it simple, okay? If you take into account clinical crown tilting and all of that, you're gonna end up over-reducing, okay? And for the ideal situation, we should not have that as an issue, okay? Again, we're trying to perform an anatomical reduction following the contour of the tooth. So this is not a straight line reduction. You're not just going straight across. I asked you, as you're accomplishing the occlusal reduction first, you're going to go up and over cuss tips, and you're doing an anatomical reduction. The same applies for the buccal and lingual surfaces. It's an anatomical reduction. It is going around the surface so that you create a nice circular reduction. Also, to make things a little bit more complex for you, this is something that we must do for Mr. and Mrs. Kilgore here for our purposes. You need to try and keep your finish line half a millimeter above the typodont gingiva. That is for our preclinical purposes only. That is not something that is done clinically. We need for you to do that, one, so that you don't abrade your typodont gingiva and make it challenging for you to make a provisional restoration. If you bury your finish line on the typodont gingiva, it's very difficult for you to accomplish that task, making a provisional. Once you nick your gingiva, the materials that we use for making a provisional then stick to the plastic, and it's a downhill spiral for you. So I ask that you keep your typodont gingiva, keep your finish line half a millimeter above the typodont gingiva, okay? So that means it would make more sense for you to start up high and work your way down. And understand that you need to stop while you're ahead, okay? Even if it's a little irregular, just stop while you're ahead, okay? But again, clinically, that is not what you would do. That finish line would be just tucked into the sulcus of the gingiva, okay? But that's what we're going to do for Mr. and Mrs. Kilgore. I think I had another. Again, I can only stress your anatomical reduction, and that your finish line is going to be half a millimeter above the gingiva uniformly. So in approximately, that's going to arch up and follow the contour of your gingiva. It's not just going to go straight across. So it should follow the contour of the gingiva and arc up in approximately. Your preparation finesse on the end of your burr block, there is an end cutting burr. I think it's the 106. Look at your burr block 10639 something L. Yes, looks like it doesn't have anything on it except right on the tip. That is an end cutting burr, which is what you can utilize to finesse your finish line. It's safe so that you don't abrade the adjacent teeth. Okay, so that is what you could utilize to finesse your finish line. And we all know that the finish line is that terminal end of the cut and uncut portion of the tooth, right? That's what we were going to say today on our quiz, yes? Yes? No? Maybe. Okay. I think I'm going to stop there because I'm fading and getting dizzy. I do not want to pass out. I'm going to have the faculty, I think I see 2 people here, have you go ahead and get started with number 30. And it will probably take you a couple of tries to get it done. Again, our goal will be for you to have something that would be evaluatable, for lack of better terms, by the end of class next week. End of class next week. There would not be any need for you to come in next week trying to get ahead and work on this unless you just wanted to try and practice. But we will be here the following week ready to go. Okay?